when we look at maturity modeling, this is like the first draft of what we were looking to do. And we wanted to kind of, make it look like that. Now, when we say look like this, they wanted to know where we are right now and what changes did I make and it moves the bar. Well, that got to be a little bit hard for the programmer. And then we had this problem over here. We wanted to bring it up a level. Didn't want to necessarily talk about digital identity. We wanted to talk about identity. And as you can see in the model, for those of you who had an opportunity to play with it, looking at it from an identity standpoint, because as you know, there's a lot that happens before you get to that digital identity. Identity proofing, breeder document, all of those things. Not so much credentialing capability, but the fact of credentials. Privilege management, we found that, that's an access protocol. Authentication, that's an access protocol. And then authorization and access. So we found that a lot of this, we could tighten it up. So some smart folks in the team, not me, but some smart folks in the team decided to make it a little more streamlined. Cryptography and auditing, it got in the too hard to do box. So what we decided to do is to kind of look at our work streams and look at how we were organized and try to do a model consistent with the work that we're performing. And that kind of makes sense because as we started looking at the work streams and the ones that we talked about in chapter 6 of the FICAM, you have outreach communications, you have the program management, policy, budget, performance, and those other elements that we know and love. So what I'm saying is that we wanted to align it with some of the stuff that we were talking about. So the first one that we wanted to look at the highest level was governance and program management. Governance and program management is also very important. So when we start looking at the maturity model, one of the things in the model is each one of the questions is referenced with a section of the FICAM. So if you don't know what the question means, all you have to go to the FICAM 6.1.1.1 and you see where it came from. And that's the way it's done. Every question in this thing, I can't move it around. Oops, let me get that back. I'll get back to that in a minute. Every one of these questions, and there's some drop-down menus and stuff like that, and you'll see this in action as we move along. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we have an understanding is in the program management and governance structure, we all need to know where we fit in the scenario. Now, a lot of people haven't seen this because I made it up because I was trying to explain to people the actors participate and participants and what they were responsible for, focus areas, when you're starting to do some implementation and acquisition and those things. The first thing, and I have this in other sessions where I break it down bit by bit, but I want to just to think of this for a minute. The end user. End users are people that says, this is what I want. I want this stuff, and I want it to look like this. And we call that requirements. Okay, like when you go out and buy a car, he says, and especially if you're going to go out and buy a new car, those of you who are available to do that, he says, I want this kind of car, and it's got to have this stuff in it. That is my requirement, period. So the end user is the master or mistress of the requirement. And I'm not doing double talk here. It's just, that's the way it is. So then you have an entity or a level or an actor called an integrator, a dealer, solution provider. And what they're supposed to do is provide solutions to the person's requirement. Okay? So I want a car. This is the kind of car I want. This is the stuff I want in it. The dealer, integrator, reseller says, have I got the solution for you? And here it is. It meets all of your requirements. Okay, there's one other actor. There's the manufacturer and software developer. And generally what happens, they do some market research, but the main market researchers, they go to their dealers and they go to their solution providers and says, hey guys, what kind of product should I make? And that's the question that they need to answer. And if I make it, can you sell it? Is there a need? Is there a requirement for the product that I make? Can you piece it together, integrate it into a solution that meets requirements? Okay. So when you start looking at it, it really makes sense. Now, as a federal government end user, I couldn't go to integrators to get information. Why? Well, I could go to them, but I had to get the blessings from acquisition people and stuff like that because they sell me stuff directly. So I would always go to the manufacturers and says, hey, let me see what kind of product you have. And then what they would do is I would say, well, who can sell your product? And then they would give me about 5 or 6 people. And then I will put a spec out there. And if I want the product because it meets my, requirements, and I know that I have solution providers that can use that product to meet my requirement, so then I can get that from the manufacturer. They're not going to sell it to me. The key thing in acquisition in the federal government in many places, they want to have competition. And in some cases it's 3 or more, in some cases is, more than 3. The other piece of that is, unless I'm not going to get into acquisition rules, you do have set asides and where they set some acquisitions aside for people of varying social status. But we're not getting into that. But for the most part, the acquisition process, whether you're in private industry or not, they basically want competition. They want the end user to be able to select from those solutions that meet their requirement based on capability to meet the requirement and cost. Cost is not always, low bid is not always the way folks look at things. A lot of people think, but best value does come into play more than what people realize. So to summarize this chart, and as you can see here on the left side of the chart, you see that we're specifying going down to the manufacturer, from the end user to the manufacturer. And from the manufacturer to the end user is to meet or satisfy. I can't tell you how many times this is ward off evil spirits by me just explaining this to people in this manner. We had some very smart people that understood the acquisition process and all that and the other, but I said at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about. So if you're an end user, you need to know how to develop your requirements. Okay. If you are a solution provider or an integrator, you need to know how to present your solution to the end user so they will give you the work. If you're a manufacturer, you need to make the right products. So that's kind of how that works. And when I say that to folks, and I hold them to that, even to some of my commercial clients, it takes them a while to get it. And once they get it, it's like, ooh, I could have had a VA type of moment. So those are the kinds of things that if you just keep this in your head or use it any way you want to, but I think that will keep you grounded in terms of who does what to whom. So then we start looking at, okay, I want to try to, walk you through this, show you exactly, because your final exam is going to be based on how you can put in the appropriate recommendations, and we'll talk through that. I'll cover the exam with you. Okay. In the instructions, it tells you a little bit about the FICAM, the background, the model overview, results dashboard, self-assessment, and it tells you, I'm not going to move to it, but it can move through this, but I recommend you not do that. But for the most part, as you can see down here at the bottom, those are the areas that you'll complete. And you can see here, this talks about the instructions. I'm not going to read it to you. You can read it yourself. It's very straightforward. Okay, then we go into the executive summary. There's the executive summary. Now, the diamonds, when you get it, is right here. That means because it's not populated. Everything is blank until you start populating things. So, but basically, this tells you a little bit of how it works, how the graph works. And this is a very good tool from the standpoint of explaining to management where you are. And then right here, it gives you a narrative based on how you answer the questions as to the overall program. And we're going to kind of walk through a bunch of the pieces, and I'll answer some things based on the questions there, and you'll see how these things move back and forth. So the executive summary is there. Then you have what we call scoring details. So this tells you what the score is, and then it works its way down. This is the overall score. Then it works its way down to each one of the component parts here. See here? And it works its way down to each of those component parts based on how you answer the question. Okay? And this is how this works. Okay? If you have any questions as we go through the actual piece, raise your hand, give me a thing or something, because I'm not looking. I've got two screens, but I'm not looking at the other screen. So John is typing. Can you just come off of mute and ask me the question, John? No. Yeah, I mean, it can't be necessarily truthful because we're talking in a fictitious way. We're not talking about something that's real. We're talking about something that's scenario driven. So it's subjective, and it's how, and I can generally tell whether you put something, and I'll talk about that in a minute, whether you're doing something that doesn't appear to be consistent with the literature. Gosh, I don't believe I said that. All right, that's not consistent with the literature. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so I told you governance and program management. This is the chapter and verse, and over here is a drop-down menu. And since this is the first time we've done this, and you ask the question, it says, yeah, we got something out there, and it's so the question is, has a mechanism been put in place? Either it is or it isn't. Let's say no. So the next one, let's go to here, and it says, does your agency has an authority to enforce? And I'll say yes, but we hadn't done that yet. Which describes the thing, credentialing, physical, what your program is structured to manage ethics across projects. And then it has a bunch of different things. Okay, it has little or no coordination, which is what the situation was in many agencies. So they would click this. ICAM projects are managed by integrated project teams. Well, you can't have a project team if you don't have a policy. So we'll say that. The next one. Does your agency, concerns, issues and concerns are routed? I'll say partially. Okay. Then we said, does your agency have a mechanism or working group? We say, since we just started, I will say, yeah, we partially done something with that. Okay. Which agency describes your staffing support? As you can see, what's happening here is we're answering has identified the need. Identified the need, and have a plan, and I'll say they have planned to do something because you're filling this out. Does your agency program governance include involvement from the privacy office? I would say, oh, of course. Then you go down to stakeholder management and communications, those kinds of things. And does your agency have a strategy? I'm not going to try to populate everything in all of these, but I think I've got enough in there for the bullet to move around. Does your agency have a mechanism, identifies, yada, 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 chapter 7? I'll say partially. Does the statement describes the way identity is stored? I'll say that, because most people have that irregardless of where you're at with your ICAM. Does your agency have a mechanism, view, update their identity data to store where users via self-service portal? And I would say most agencies still does not. Which statement describes the way in which your agency established data elements that did its identity? Right, let's see, what does it say on this? It's not. I'll say we haven't defined it. Again, I'm not going to go through all of it. Which statement describes the elements collected? Has done analysis. Okay, we'll say yes to that. Okay, which one is this? Does your agent work with its privacy office? Of course we work with the privacy office. We love privacy. Has your agency privacy? Yes, they have. Of course they have. And then you got streamline onboarding. Now, let me see what happened here. I'm not sure if anything happened. You see what happened to the diamonds? The diamonds moved over based on the way I answered the question. So that says that we're in the initial portion of this, which means that we're just starting. Okay. And as we go through, and the way I answered the question is because we just started. All right. So we have to really kind of put our arms around, we just started. So as you think through this, it's a scenario that I'm going to give you a situation for, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and as to how this all works. So as you go down through that, and let's look at the scoring details. Aha. See what happened with the scoring details? Your agency is in the initial phase, da-da-da-da-da. Okay. Now, what I want to show you is that part of the requirement will be for you to print these off when you finish. Now, many of you do not know how to do that, how you can take this, and we'll do something called print. Okay, now, most of your solutions will have this feature. Microsoft Print to PDF. And when you do that, and you say print, it's going to create a PDF that you can put, and you can name it. Okay, let's call it, run in test. Okay, and I'll put this in my downloads. So it's now printing it, and so it's there. Oh, I gotta go get it. So this is what you're going to be handing in to me, as you can see. Come on, move it over. There we go. See, I made a nice little PDF, and it's going to show what you've done. Did everybody get that? Does anybody? So that shows how that is, and that's an identity management. And then you go in and you answer some questions. You do credential management, and you go down and you answer some questions, and physical access control. But you don't have to answer the questions. I'll explain that to you in just a minute. Logical and federation. So by the time you do all of these, your diamonds will have moved back and forth. That's why I said play with it a little bit, so that you can see. Now, one of the things that I'm going to look at when I see your maturity models is when you put something in here to change what I'm going to give you. I want you to kind of give me a very subjective or suggestive thing as to what would be your actions to accomplish it to the next level. So in other words, it's going to tell you what you need to do. And just all you have to do is says, okay, based on what it says I need to do, because it's going to give you a general thing. So how do I, because I look at to see whether you've thought through a real life scenario, because now you're the ICAM program manager. And so you got to say, and I'll tell you exactly how that works. So let me go, and this is what you're going to get on the examination. So let me move this out the way. And let me, give me a minute here. No, I want to save. I want to save it. Give me a minute. I'm working on my other screen real quick. Excel is not responding. I don't know why, but anyway. Okay. So I'm going to pull up your exam. No, I didn't go in and get it. I thought it would come up, but it didn't. Ah, here it is. Okay. This is what you're going to get in very short order. I'll say later on this evening. The 11th, okay, remember, gotta have it. And it really covers all of the sessions. This is the situation. The reason why I want to make sure it's bigger. I'm setting you up as a scenario. This is the scenario. You're assigned as the ICAM program manager. Previous program manager performed maturity model assessment And I'm going to give you that assessment. And this is the scenario. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to revise the test case 1 maturity model, rename it to ICAM final with your last name. Please do that. As soon as you get it, rename it with ICAM final, your last name. Okay, that's very important because I don't want to get things confused. After you finish what you're going to do, based on what I'm going to ask you to do, and you'll see it in a minute, I need you to print the PDF, the executive summary, and the scoring details. Everybody got it? Okay. So print the PDF, that. Then I want you to upload your corrected maturity model and the 2 PDF files to Canvas. Note all changes to your maturity model revision and show generally what kind of action you took. I'll be looking to see if you just, other than just changing it, give me some rationale in the comment block that says what you did. Now that won't show up in the scoring details or executive summary, but it will show up in the maturity model. And I want to see what kind of thought processes that you use for that. And then there is executive summary. Now, I want an executive summary of, I want you to tell me this. And you can kind of summarize the 5 components and the 4 interfaces for the black arrows. Remember, we did this before. Okay. And yeah, 4 interfaces. I really wanted to see, based on your maturity model, based on what you did, how does that affect your understanding and where you're going to go forward with your ICAM program. This should happen last. Okay, we talked about this. You see in the areas. So what I am saying to you, the maturity model must be either managed, defined, or managed. Everything. So you have to do whatever actions in the maturity model so that everything is defined or managed. So that's why I said you need to work through everything. And then once you get it all over there, and define and manage. Okay. This is not as hard as it looks, but if you haven't been conscious to what we've been doing, it may take you a little bit. But the thing is, this is not anything that is, oh my gosh, it's hidden agendas. There's no hidden agendas here. Logical access control. And as you can see, it's articulating to you in the maturity model the chapter and verse that it came from. So all of that, and I'm giving you some additional references. I would say take your time, don't overthink it. Just save the the test case, rename it like I mentioned, and then you play with it. If you get totally screwed up, take the test case again, resave it, and do it again until if you really screw up the one that you did. The basic one that I asked you to download originally is something for your use. I would say put that in the same folder of your FICAM file, because if you ever want to use this again, even though you can modify it to the current doctrine that's out there, or you can modify it elsewhere, you'll have it a clean copy to play with. What I've done, and when I do agencies, I've got a tool that I use that is based off of this. And whenever I go into an agency or something like that, I've done 2 agencies already, I will adopt it to where they are, and I will use this model basically to show them where they're at. But I have another tool that I can adopt and change, and it's a cloud tool that I have used. But for the most part, this gives you the basics. As you're talking, just think about it. If you're talking to someone, or that you are the program manager and you're looking at this, and you got to move the needle forward, explain how. Yeah, John.
Yeah, Professor. So for the comment section, are we to fill out comments for all the questions and responses that we provide?
Well, if you have
Right.
see how it was sectioned out. If you've changed it somewhat, I want to see something that you would have done if we're like in the future. Not every single one of them. That might get a little haphazard. As long as I get an idea, as that you know the cause and effect of what you did to cause the needle to move forward. Make sense? Maybe. If you want to do every one, you can. But I mean that is helpful. It could be just a phrase. It could be a sentence to explain it, just so that you can stay track. I mean, it's not. I'm not looking for a doctorate dissertation
Okay.
comment blocks. You know what I mean? Because remember, when you use this form, nobody's going to see the comments but you. The only thing they will see is the scoring details and the executive summary. I just want to see where you're at with some of these things. Okay, and so I would say, as a principal, like for instance, if you don't have a policy, you really couldn't do certain things. Remember how I said that? No, I don't have a policy, therefore I couldn't do these other three things if I don't have a policy. How do I implement something if I don't have a policy? You got to put sense to it also. Does that make sense? Remember when I was talking about first thing you said, do you have a policy? The da 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 da. No. Then the other questions that I had, when you listen to this portion of the tape, you'll see that. Oops. If I don't have a policy, how can I do this next step? So I got to have a policy first, then I do the next step. You can say, well, I've established a policy in accordance with this, and dot, dot, dot. So then the next steps would say, yeah, I have a policy, we've implemented that, we've implemented that. Because I have a policy now where I didn't.
Yeah, thank you guys, sir.
Okay? Think through it. I just want it to make sense. Don't labor yourself over it. If it doesn't make sense, I mean, no one has really done bad if they've really taken a good stab at it, and I've done this numerous times already. If you try to think through it, I'm looking for your thought more so there is no necessarily the right answer, except you got to get the needle to move to the other side. And I just want to see exactly how you did it. Now, you got to remember, I'm asking for an executive summary too, so you can probably articulate it there, in detail about how your changes is going to affect the
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. So this is it. I'm going to send this out to you in very short order. Let me get out of here. Come on. My mouse don't want to work. There it is. Come on. I don't know why it takes so long. It does that to me all the time. Okay. Where's that? Oh, here. Okay. So we've had a walkthrough of both things, and next week the exam is due, and we'll have a short discussion on return on investments, the toolkit that you can take what you have done, your maturity model and things, and how you can possibly use that to defend your budgets. This is not part of the test because if I had more weeks, this is my fun part that I really like with this because this is how I got most of my stuff done. When I had to do the two assertions, I had to use this extensively. And it works. But I'm going to cover that. You have that as your toolkit. There's a couple of use cases in there and those things, but we'll cover that next week. So with that, I'm going to leave the balance of the time and I'm going to put this. I think what I'm going to do is in lesson 7, I'll put the examinations and everything in lesson 7. So when you go into your files, you can just pick it up from there. You can get everything that you need, all of the forms and the stuff, and I'll put everything in there so that you will have it. Okay. So look for lesson 7, and then inside of it will be the test, and it will be the rest of the stuff. So with that, if anybody has any questions for the good of the order, if not, okay. Kevin, what's up? Kevin. Are you there, Kevin? How about the mute button? Nope, mute button's off. Type it in, Kevin. I don't know. He raised his hand, and then I don't have anything going on. Okay. he'll contact me if it's something that's a burning desire. So everyone, good luck, and I'll be looking at grading the exams if I have them all tonight by tomorrow morning, and you'll have what's happening with that. Excuse me. Hopefully by tomorrow afternoon. What's happening with that? Excuse me. Hopefully by tomorrow afternoon.